Welcome back to Ministers in the Making. I'm Paul Horstmeyer, here with my co-host, John Corollas. And today, I'm excited to say that we have a very special friend joining us. He is the ever-imitated, never duplicated, Brazilian-born, Boston-raised Alvaro Witt-Duarte. Alvaro, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Paul, John.
Alvaro, it's great to be here in the studio with you today. And as we continue our mission of trying to share the seminary community with those who don't have the opportunity to be a part of it the same way that students do, I was wondering and excited that you agreed to share your story with us here today.
But first, Alvaro, did you like the introduction?
I did. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. I wrote it in class, so.
Oh, okay. Well.
We do not advocate for writing intros during class.
Good.
Now, getting back to business, could you tell us a little bit of your story, a little bit of your path to seminary, maybe surrounding the decision you made when you knew you wanted to come to seminary, and then sort of the process of how you ended up being a first-year MDiv student now?
Sure. I think that my story is, in a way, fits into the traditional story of those who come to seminary, but in a way it isn't. I really thought about going into seminary when I was in middle school. I really enjoyed the church that I was in. I always enjoyed going to Sunday school. I always enjoyed reading Scripture. And I went into high school, and after graduating high school, I didn't really have the opportunity to go into any seminaries because I'm in the Northeast, and in the Northeast we don't have any Lutheran seminaries or any even Lutheran colleges. In New England. The closest one we have is in New York. So I decided to go from high school right into college to get a history degree. So I did that, and I got a teaching license as well. And then right after college, I taught high school for 3 years. And that aspect of seminary was always in my mind. It never really left.
So it was there the whole time you were going through college?
Oh, yeah.
And while you were teaching?
Yes, for sure. One of the great conversations that I had with one of my mentor teachers when I had gotten the job at the high school was about stop teaching to go to seminary. And she looked at me like I had 18 heads, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, that's a great dream, but you're making much more money here, and you're going to have a great retirement fund. You should stick around." And so I was like, well, okay. So next year came around, and I love teaching. I still love teaching today. I still am in contact with my students.
You said it was a high school. Is that a public high school?
It was a public high school.
And large?
Yeah. Fairly big. Yeah. In a seaside town.
Wow.
In the North Shore in Massachusetts, Essex County. Shout out to anybody listening from Essex County. So I decided to apply to seminary. And when I decided to apply, I told nobody at the school.
Interesting.
I felt like I was going to get a lot of pushback.
Sure.
Some of my best friends were my colleagues, but I felt like they weren't going to necessarily understand my reasoning for this. And part of it is I don't want to say state of Christianity in the Northeast, but it's really novel for somebody to go into the ministry. Okay. I don't know anybody my age that's gone into the ministry from my community. So I applied, and I got accepted, all secretly, if you will, from my colleagues and my students.
Sure. Were you talking to anybody about this as you were doing it? Like family?
Or yeah, my
friends?
family knew. My family was very supportive. My family in Brazil was very supportive, especially. I have 4 or 5 cousins, second cousins, third cousins who are pastors in the Brazilian Lutheran Church.
Wow.
Which used to be a district of the Missouri Synod.
Oh, okay.
And only recently, in the last 70 years, became its own synod. But anyway, so June came around, end of May, beginning of June, as the school year died down. and I came into the last history department meeting that we had, and there's actually this lady there who was retiring that year. And she, was going on about, I'm sorry I'm not going to be here next year, but I'm very happy to retire. And at the end, the department head said, well, does anybody else have anything to say? So I spoke up and I said, I'm not returning next year. I'm going to seminary. And they looked at me like I revealed like this, like the secret or something. I let the cat out of the bag. They looked at me and like, no, you're kidding. Like, no, I'm serious. And they already used to joke with me. They used to call me Father Alvaro or something at school. Because they knew I would, go to church, and I would often talk about that, and in conversation, things regarding Christianity would come up. So they already had that idea, so it wasn't too much of a surprise.
Were any of your colleagues Christian, even?
Not really, no.
Wow.
No, yeah.
So it sounds like you're almost kind of describing two distinct communities within at least the area that you were growing up and working in, where you kind of had a church community that was very much divided from the work community, at least personally for you. Was there, with that divide there, where you weren't working with people that you had grown up spiritually with and, that sort of thing, did that have any effect on your own spiritual formation and your decision and thought to come to seminary, or was it just always something constant in your head that you knew was going to happen at some point soon?
That's a good question. I could see two distinct communities, for sure. I am glad that I grew up where I grew up and worked where I worked, because this is a little bit of theologian of glory coming out, but it really gives you an opportunity to be that Christ shining light,
sure,
in that community. And so when you know that you're one of the few people in this huge school that, openly says, I go to church, I believe in Christ, it sets you apart pretty quickly. But then you would go to church on Sunday and you'd just be with your brothers and sisters. But then you'd go to work and you're the only one there. And so that would be very interesting every week, I never really got pushback. Nobody ever questioned necessarily my faith.
Yeah.
But people were just very apathetic about church. And yes, going back to your question about that shaping my decision to go to seminary, it's really early in the game, to talk about calls and to talk about vicarage being a first year or first semester. But I really do want to go back to New England because I see a need in New England. I see how people are thirsty and hungry for the gospel. I'm not going to...
It spurred you on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It kind of inspired you to actually make your move to go to seminary.
Yes.
Rather than it just being an idea. And so I'm a little bit curious then. You said growing up within the church and always having that being a strong part of your identity and your area. Did the idea of becoming a pastor, specifically that career, did that just kind of show up eventually out of the environment you grew up in, or was there a moment where you kind of realized that you did want to pursue that career path, and also did that coincide with the inspiration you received from your coworkers, or was it before then that you knew for sure?
I think I knew when I started student teaching. So as with most jobs that deal with people, you have a year of internship or a semester of internship, just as we have here with vicarage. And so like I said, my decision to come to seminary was never based on me not liking my job. Mm-hmm. But I knew that dealing with Christ's word and dealing with the spread of the gospel, I felt like that was calling me more, and I could see it more clearly because of the society that I was working in. So I wouldn't say that it was so much more of a push because, like I said, ever since middle school, that's always been in my head.
Yeah.
But it was in my head. I don't want to, I don't want to sound dramatic here, but it was now or never, to come to seminary because I was in my third year of teaching. I said, really want to do this. I really want to go to seminary is what I mean. And if I don't do it, I don't think I'll do it ever. But it's always going to be in my mind. And so when I started to talk to people about it, whether it was my congregation, whether it was my family, whether it was my friends, they were very supportive. Even when I mentioned it to my coworkers at the end of the year, just last June, people were really supportive. They were upset that I was leaving because I really had still do, very good relationship with my coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
But they were very supportive in that. And so that reaffirmed in my heart my will or my want to come to St. Louis for seminary.
Yeah, and that's great that you still got some of those strong relationships that you're still able to cultivate even though you're no longer in that area, in that work environment. And so we kind of touched on a little bit the influences of your decision to come to seminary and sort of the development of that idea. And so I would love to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about how seminary has been going for you so far. And so maybe some things that you're involved with around campus or just maybe your fieldwork congregation or things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the experiences you've had so far here and maybe some of the general changes in your perception of what ministry looks like? I know it's early on, like you said. It definitely is. It feels early on for Paul and I still being only in our second year, but even just after a few weeks of classes, sometimes you get a different feel for what ministry maybe is going to be like or a different perspective. So talk a little bit about life on campus.
So the campus always has something going on, and I think that's a great thing. And it's not just something in one department. There are various things you could do at various times, regardless of what your likes and dislikes are. So when I came in, I'm a big fan of music. I like singing and I like playing. So one of the first things that I got involved with was choir here. And so I became part of that. And that's been real fun. We've gotten to perform in some really nice churches around town. I also got involved. Well, I pretended that I was going to get involved in some of the sports, but that never happened. But there are also plenty of opportunities for those listening to get involved into sports.
Prospective basketball player.
Prospective basketball. I did sign up to do tennis, so expect to see
There's
me.
still time. You might still be a student athlete come spring.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what? Yeah. So go on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Regarding fieldwork, I did some pieces of the liturgy at home in Boston, at my church in Linfield, but had never gotten to do the whole thing. So my pastor was pretty open with me, saying, just tell me how much you want to do. If you don't want to do much, you can let me know, and because you're just, first semester.
Yep.
So I said, okay, so let me do Bible study one time. So we were doing a Martin Luther Bible study. So it was my wheelhouse because I was a history
You're a
major.
history guy, yeah.
Right. So I loved doing that. So that was really fun. And then we started slowly working up to reading doing the lectionaries for the day, and then up to prayers, and then chanting even, which was interesting. I really enjoyed that. And then I think 2 weeks ago is when I did my first full liturgy.
Wow.
And that was daunting, It was it's a big deal. So there's plenty of opportunity, going back to your question, plenty of opportunity there to get involved in my RFE congregation. And that was
just
really fun.
Just a side note then, what is your fieldwork congregation kind of context? Describe the kind of church you're working at. Where is it?
It's on Morganford Road.
It's in the city.
It's in the city. Yeah, so it's only about 10, 15 minutes away.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's one of the historic churches, right? I mean, it's got a big history to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
St. John's, Morganford. So interestingly enough about the name, it's called St. John's with the apostrophe after the S because it's named after both John the Baptist and John the Evangelist.
Wow.
Because I brought that up to the pastor. I said, is this apostrophe in the wrong place?
Did this? Yeah.
And he said, no, the church is named after.
And is it a large church?
It is not. I think it was a large church
It had its
at
heyday,
one point.
sure.
Exactly. But because of many of the original families, now moving out and going to elsewhere, other places in St. Louis or outside the city to live, the church is not very big. It's close to the size of my church at home in Linfield, so that was nice too.
How big is that?
I think we have about 50 to 60 a Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's one service at 9 a.m. With Bible study.
Great.
Following. Yeah.
Are you doing modules right now?
Oh, that's right, the modules. Yeah, I remember you talking about your modules in your first or second episode of this.
did.
A good, faithful listener here.
That's right. I'm waiting for you guys to do like the talk shows where they give the like a password, and if you keep listening, you call in and you say what was the secret word or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
When we had 100 subscribers, we were going to be doing our first giveaways.
Yeah,
so.
Right.
The ninth caller will.
We'll get a Thrivent shirt. Yeah.
You've never seen one of those before.
No. That's one of my activities. Let me let you into one of my things. One of my daily check, get out of bed, check, put on socks, check kind of thing. One is see a Thrivent shirt.
Yeah.
Daily.
Yeah.
And it's pretty consistent.
I'm sure that the seminary community makes that a possibility for you.
But even on like a Saturday when I'm driving in
St.
St. Louis.
St. Louis makes it possible for you to
Those
see.
Thrivent shirts are so comfortable. I mean, they're pretty much my go-to shirt for like relaxing. So
right.
Yeah, and I've seen them on just what seemed like random people. Yeah, just out on the sidewalk and everything.
I was at Grace Meat Plus 3. Have you guys been there? It's a new restaurant in town. Hipster feelish kind of thing. And
Makes
so
sense.
I saw this family in there, and it was on Sunday after church, and I was with some fellow seminarians there, and there was this little kid who's wearing a Thrivent shirt, and his parents were there, and I think his grandparents, and so I naturally started a conversation with the mom, or being like, "Oh, you guys coming from church?" They're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "How do you know we're Lutherans?" We ended up going, and I'm like, well, he's wearing a Thrivent shirt.
Dead giveaway.
But these people actually had a lot of connections to the seminary, and the grandfather had connections to music here at the seminary like 40 years ago. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So we were talking about activities and modules. I am at Christian Friends of New Americans.
Okay.
That's my cross-cultural module down on South Grand.
Great.
And that's been really, really rewarding to being able to work with kids. A lot of the kids are, most of them are immigrants or refugees from Nepal or from the Congo. And so we get to work with them on homework for about 45 minutes, and then later we go and we have recreational time for about half an hour, and then the last piece, the last half an hour or so, is a devotional, usually led by a local pastor who gets called over to do a devotional. And so it's rewarding. It's challenging because they're kids,
Yeah.
So,
but a lot of fun too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. So I say that the cross-cultural isn't necessarily that these kids come from another culture, but it's me dealing with.
It's the generation gap.
It's the generation
High
gap.
school teacher versus children.
Versus 10-year-olds. Yeah. So that's been really, really fun, and I'm sad that it's ending soon because of the semester, finishing up. But my next module will be, the institutional module will be at St. Mary's Hospital. And I'm pretty excited for that one.
Yeah, very good.
I don't know what it entails exactly, But
Well, maybe we can bring you in to talk about it later on.
oh,
depending
well,
on how
yeah,
this
yeah.
interview
I
goes.
thought you were just going to say that you were going to tell me right now. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so going on then about seminary and more specifically kind of focusing on the perspective it's given you on ministry so far. Have you had any thoughts about maybe what ministry is going to be like, and then you started taking more classes or experiencing the formation that happens here, and then coming to some realizations about ministry, or maybe some things you've learned about ministry that you're excited about after having come into contact with them at the seminary? What do you have to say about that?
So, regarding doing ministry, I had a very good relationship with my pastors at home. So and they let me in to sort of the nuts and bolts of ministry, that, talking to them about seminary, they made it pretty clear to me what their everyday lives were like.
Sure.
And so regarding expectations of doing ministry, it's been pretty even regarding the things I've heard from my home pastors and what I've heard from professors. So that's been constant. Something that surprised me in a good way was how much care the seminary has for us in terms of how our health is going into the ministry. Not just can you preach, or how many Bible verses do you have memorized, or how's your exegetical, or how's your systematic theology, how they care about your person. How are you doing? How's your health? How's your spiritual health? How is your financial health or psychological health and all that? So that's been something that I guess I didn't know that we were going to talk about so much. And I'm very thankful for it because, you reflect on yourself. You say, how am I doing physically? How am I doing spiritually? Is there something for me to work on? And so that's been a big part of our pastoral ministry course.
I think in an academic environment like this, where it's full-time, if you're living on campus, you can kind of get caught up in just the bookwork and the homework, and you start to get a little bit distracted from some of those more important well-being issues, and you maybe aren't thinking about some of the long-term effects or some of the preparation that this time is designed for you to be involved with, so that when you do leave the seminary and eventually take hold of a church, you're going to be well-equipped to do that not only mentally and academically and knowledgeably, but also in a healthy way, so that you're not completely surprised by the challenges that you might face financially, or time management wise, or even with dealing with just, it's a people ministry, and dealing with people and just all the different situations you can come across in the ministry. I think I've come to witness that as well, not only in the courses and in personal interactions with instructors, but also we start talking about the new curriculum, and they've really taken steps forward to have that element of well-being recognized by the administration in the official preparation of a student. So it's not something just marginal anymore, but it's a focus of the curriculum, and I think that's been a very positive thing. And your statement about that, I think, is really encouraging for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think, I know they've been really good about that with your class, Alvaro, and they've had lots of, sessions of sort of discussing all these topics, and we're kind of in the weird transition period where last year we were in the old curriculum where they did not focus on that as much, and now they're trying to sort of catch us up. But I do remember sort of the first day when they were introducing this whole idea of, being healthy and well and all these different areas, that really came about because when they were doing research about what are sort of the commonalities with guys that, really burn out or fail or drop out of ministry, the guys that only last 5 or 10 years.
Right.
And then what about the guys that, really seem to thrive? They have the family situation's good, everything, is going well. They've got a faithful ministry going on. And, they were saying, like, it's not all the strictly theological stuff like you were saying. It's not just, oh, that guy can't, read the Greek right there. Oh, he's kick him out, It's a lot of the things of, wow, he was getting so caught up in work, he was not managing his finances, and now he can't, afford this job anymore. Or, now he sort of let his physical health go, and now he's, he can't even sort of do the daily tasks. And it's like, yeah, once they started talking about that, it's like, wow, that's so true. Like, as much as you could be so, like, prepared, academically and theologically, you're just, it's almost useless if if one of those other things kind of holds you back and makes you incapable of ministry. So I'm glad that that's been a nice, sort of positive note for you. Maybe a surprising thing. It was surprising for me too, but I am glad that they're actually taking that, into account with, and warning us, like, you guys need to value, your health in all these ways.
Yeah. I think that they're pretty clear on the challenges that you're going to face.
Yeah.
And this preparation isn't necessarily for these challenges to be avoided, but it's how do you deal with them. And that's what I like. That's the clarity I like as well. They're not saying you're not going to have health problems. They're not saying you're not going to have, financial problems, but they're saying we're giving you tools to deal with these issues when they arise. And so there's that reality aspect as well.
Yeah, and
they're not giving you a key that says, this will solve all your problems.
And I think another strong point of it is it's not something that is necessarily ministry specific, but these are challenges that every professional is going to run into at some point in their life. And by letting you address it and hearing from experts in the areas or people that are experienced in dealing with some things like this, they really do a lot to help prepare us for the road ahead.
Yeah, it was our health when the two presenters came in to talk about health wellness, and it was Professor Saleska and Professor Brogy.
Sure.
And it was eye-opening to see Professor Saleska, such a young, he's fairly young, but very lean and healthy, and him being like, this happened to me when I was in grad school, and it was a big health issue in my life. And,
Sure.
for us, it was eye-opening to see, somebody who just appears to be so healthy and is healthy right now, but say, I was so focused on these other areas of my life that I forgot about this other area. Yep. And it came back.
Yeah, balance is definitely, I think, a big focal point for the sort of the practical aspects that come with preparing for ministry.
Right.
So kind of bouncing off of that then, what sort of, what's maybe the biggest thing that you are emotional about concerning ministry? And what I mean is, what are you either most afraid of or most excited for when it comes to what the ministry might hold? What sort of element are you particularly passionate about, if there is one?
I am passionate about, and this goes back to my roots, I know that there's a large Brazilian population in New England and in Boston specifically. And a lot of these communities are not that, what's the word? They're not reached out in terms of gospel and stuff like that. So that's one of the passions I have, is to go back to New England and not only work with the American population, but also with the immigrant population around. That's something that I've been looking forward to and thinking about a lot. I mean, again, it's early in the process, but that's something that I would really like to do, is to go back home. Not home as in, perhaps Boston itself, but the New England area, because I see a great need there. And then your other question was about something that I'm fearful of, perhaps.
Sure.
Going back home.
Yeah.
It's the whole prophet not being welcomed. I'm not taking that as to the letter, but it is New England. It is the Northeast. It is perhaps not as receptive to the gospel as
say Northern Wisconsin or Fort Wayne, Indiana.
well, yeah. It's I've met a lot of people here in St. Louis who are not Lutherans, but are Presbyterians or are Catholics, and they're fairly open about, I go to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's definitely not the case up in New England. So that's a big challenge that I see is presenting a gospel to a colder peoples regarding Christianity and regarding church attendance.
Yeah, unfamiliar too.
Yeah.
And with what you said earlier, apathetic, really, I think, is, really hits the nail on the head. I think, and we're seeing that, creep in more and more sort of inland from the coast of just, people just don't care almost. It's like, God, what do you do with that?
Yeah. And so that's been something that I think about too in terms of going home. Again, when I say home, New England. The region of New England, the 6 beautiful states of New England. Pennsylvania is not one, and nor is New York. I've heard that around campus. That drives me crazy.
You'll have to forgive those who are uninformed.
Well, yeah. But an interesting thing being here is seeing how large the Lutheran population is and seeing the face of the Lutheran Church in the Midwest. And that's been a really fun and interesting thing for me.
Yeah.
Because up in Massachusetts or even in New England as a whole, people really don't even know what Lutheranism is.
Mm-hmm.
They can't point you to a Lutheran church, or they
what
can't.
Makes that any different from any other church?
Right. Yeah. And so that's another challenge, actually. A challenge or, good and bad for, going back home. It's
fearful and exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
So then, and this is more of a speculative question. You've talked a lot about how your passion is driven from your home context, from your region, and your aspirations also are tightly bound to that area. And also, your Fieldwork church is similar to your home church over in New England. And so my question is, when it comes to an experience like vicarage, are you hoping for an experience, a context that is similar to what you're used to and what you hope to be working in? Or are you hoping to be exposed to something a little bit different from maybe what you are used to and what you are maybe looking forward to?
Oh, I think about that so often. I was driving home from Thanksgiving, driving to St. Louis, to the campus from Thanksgiving, and I was on the phone with my mom, and we spent a lot of time talking about that just the other day, about would I want to go to the West Coast, somewhere I've never been.
Yeah.
Or
the South, or...
Yeah, I'm more familiar with the South, but like Nebraska or something like that, or the Great Plains. Wisconsin. Yeah, I've never been to those places. And so I do think about that a lot. And so I don't know. I guess I wish I had an answer for you, but it's, I really would like to get my hands into the ministry in a place where I would want to work sort of ASAP.
Sure. Okay.
But I see how seeing other places is maybe more valuable. How going and seeing how the church is in California, or how the church is in New Mexico, or how the church is in Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that, or Alabama or Georgia. But I wish I had an answer for you, but it's because it's something I think about a lot. So, if it's...
And thankfully, we don't have the burden of decision on our backs as far as students when it comes to deciding where exactly vicarage is. But it is fun to think about.
Can I ask you the same question?
You can. My Fieldwork church is similar context to my home congregation, but not the same. My home congregation is a rural, large church. My Fieldwork church is a very small, rural church. And I am hoping to experience something different from both of those things, maybe outside the Midwest. And I've got my interview scheduled with the placement director, so my wife and I are excited and anxious about that. But so the hope is maybe to get into a region, a context that we're not as familiar with.
Yeah.
So that would be my answer to the speculation question.
Yeah.
So in closing, then, one more question for you. When it comes to other people who might be considering coming to seminary or just have thoughts about seminary, what advice would you give to someone considering that?
I think it is maybe one of the most important decisions of their lives, and that might sound daunting, and it is.
Sure.
But I think it comes from loving the Lord and loving the gospel. And if that's in your heart, that's a big step already in wanting to share it with other people in a more formal way. And I think that has shaped how I thought of seminary. It wasn't I've got the special calling and I feel it in my heart. It's a love for God's word that in a way made me end up here. And I think that a lot of people wait for this divine revelation of, you should go to seminary. But I think it's not clear cut. I think I think there are more people out there that have the capacity to be out here, but they're not sure or they're not convinced that it's for them. But there is, I think the thing that needs to be in your heart is a sincere love for the gospel. And I think that if somebody has that, then they should think, would I want to do this as a profession or share God's word as a profession?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that answer and all the other answers you gave us in conversation today. It was great to have you a part of our recording. So we just have a couple of closing statements here from Paul to kind of wrap up the episode. So thank you again, Alvaro.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, Alvaro, always good to talk. I look forward to talking more, hearing more. So thank you again for listening. Tune in next time. We'll hopefully have another interview lined up, some more interesting insights and perspectives from students or maybe a faculty or a staff. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. But again, we thank you for your time, and we look forward to the next.
And don't forget, we are on Facebook. We are on SoundCloud. We are on iTunes. We are on YouTube. We are everywhere. And we would love to be more than everywhere. So if you are listening to this, maybe hit the share button. Or maybe tell somebody about it. Or maybe listen to some other episodes and then share it with other people who haven't heard it yet. We would just love to continue spreading the information about seminary and continue on this journey with you as a listener. So thanks again. We will see you next time.